I'm never going to be good enough. Everybody likes X's stories better. I feel like I'm writing for the wrong crowd. I don't know if I should be doing this. Let's talk about that in episode 25 of Horrible Writing. That will never work. You can't fuck with yourself. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to spell? Stop. You don't. Don't bother me. I've seen better papers. Do you really want to shoot? And bro, give it up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey everybody, Paul Sading. Welcome to episode 25 of Horrible Writing. We are halfway to a century mark for the podcast already. This is epic. It's still the beginning of 2018. I will take it 100 times over. Absolutely indefinitely. All right. Hey, welcome again. So we've had a nice little run of episodes, and the show is really starting to branch out and bring on board other writers, bigger writers. It was such an honor to have the opportunity to interview Susan K. Quinn. I admire her on so many levels. And then after that interview, not only for her to give me so much time, to give you so much time, but also to share that part of her that a lot of writers may not necessarily share. You know, that personal peek into the window. And, with the vector of wanting to help other people. And I know it wasn't a video interview. I'm way too unbecoming to get on a camera anytime soon. So you'll always get audio dramas from me until this medium develops to the point where people demand video podcasts, i.e. otherwise known as YouTube. But it's that's not going to be my thing for as long as I can put it off. But you would have seen it had you been able to see a video interview that I got to see, essentially, that Susan was extremely genuine in her complete presentation. Everything she said was from her heart. And, it's stuff like that that really makes me fulfilled to be part of this community, or to even be able to carve out a little niche in the community, the greater community, if you will, of healthy people. Because I have always long told people that I'm very much a cynic, and I'm trying to break myself out of that mold. I'll always be skeptical. I hope I am not always a cynic. That comes from a long history, right? Just like it does for all of us. These things don't just form because we feel like it. It comes from our entire lives. The background, the environment we were raised in, the influencers in our lives, those people who affected us. And then if we're not taught this early on in life, to be very careful about who we decide to hang around, that also rubs off on us, unfortunately. You are the summation of the people that you spend the most time with, those that are influencing you. And I'm doing some of my deepest personal work I've ever done in that respect. Really, really changing out my life and changing who I keep around me in order to help me see a more positive worldview. I don't ever want to be blind to the atrocities of the world, because the atrocities, the darkness of the world is what I channel when I'm creating stories. I'm not celebrating darkness. It's just a reality of life. It's part of the world. As long as there's a couple people at least that share the planet and its resources, we're going to have strife and conflict. It's just a fact. I don't celebrate it. I don't glamorize it. And if it ever comes across in my writing that I am, you can hear it from the horse's mouth. I'm not. So I say all this to say that I put a lot of myself into my art, but I've got a bad habit of watching other people. A good habit because I'm learning from them, but a bad habit as well because it does affect me. I'm a human being. Recently, I went to a conference, and at that conference, I was surrounded by dozens and dozens of peers of mine. And it was a wonderful networking opportunity. It really was. And that's why I went to the conference. But at the conference, I noticed some things. There were some of my peers who really took the business to heart, and they invested heavily to have a presentation at this conference. And good on them for doing that. And they got the attention that they deserved for that. Then there were a lot of us who did not. We just kind of went the more social route. And I noticed that there were a number of factors that left me in this weird headspace when I left the conference. On one hand, it was wonderful and great and exhilarating and re-energizing to meet so many of my peers and just kind of put faces to names, to meet the real people, to have a beer and a meal with the real people that I've been talking online with in audio drama for years now. But on the other hand, I'm watching these interactions that they're having with fans. And I'm not talking about just those who really put a lot of money into putting themselves out there in front of the conference. I'm also talking about those who didn't invest any money besides the cost of getting to the conference, but who also had a fan appeal. Now, I know in context, I am not comfortable trying to sell myself. I do not like it. I like to sit behind the keyboard. I like to create stories. I like to talk to you online. And I love to talk to you in person. But if you want to know more about my stories and my art, I don't, and why should you care about my art? If we're face to face, I have a hard time with it. It's a personal challenge of mine. I don't feel comfortable being a salesperson. I never have. My sales pitch is complete honesty, which probably hurts me in the end. But I watched a number of these people who did a spectacular job and who didn't even have to do a job, and they were recognized or they were lauded or loved by a number of fans. And as an artist, as a creative, we're fragile creatures anyways. We've got egos. Our stories are important to us and they're very intimate to us, so they should be for everyone, right? And when they're not, and we realize they won't always, and nor should they always be aimed at appealing to everyone, that would be irresponsible to ourselves. Even understanding that not everyone is going to like what I create, I still walked away from that conference really questioning my investment in my stories. So let me take you on that exploration real quick and see if you can tie it to your own writing journey. I'm in my 40s. I went to a conference that was hosted, if you will, by big name players in podcasting. But, two audio dramas were really big there. Both Welcome to Night Vale and Bright Sessions. So, with that in mind, you have to understand that is going to drive the audience. And the audience for Night Vale is not my audience. I get it. It's post-conference, it's after the fact, and I understand. My rational brain understands that. The problem is that I let my monkey brain take over for a little bit. That emotional reaction to that kind of stuff. You kind of get blind. Your reasoning is there. It's just shrouded in some fog and mist, and you're trying to waft away the fog, but it's as you as you blow the fog away, just more of it rolls back in to replace that vacuum. When you're in the moment, and it's not just people like that, but it was the other podcasters, I really realized I had an epiphany. As I looked around that room, there were or the conference, there were very few podcasters like me. Just demographically. And then those that were tell a different type of story. And those who tell the type of stories that I tell were not in my demographic. So I was in a really unique situation, being one of the older podcasters there, storytellers, and then telling the stories that I do, like Subject Found, Who Killed Julie, Diary of a Madman. You know, those types of, and this is my validation. Subject Found was probably second place for my shows in attention at this conference. Atheist Apocalypse was more recognizable. That told me a lot. That's my oldest show, but it's also the show that most closely aligns with the weird that audio drama seems to embrace, or a lot of audio drama seems to embrace. It seems to be the thing for right now until a time comes and the market changes, if it ever does. So, I don't know if you've ever felt like that. Have you? Have you ever gone to a conference or a gathering and sat back and wondered why you were there? Your stories don't belong there, and you as a person don't maybe necessarily belong there. The people that you're trying to put your creation in front of aren't even in your market. And this conference was a podcast conference, but it was a heavy, heavy dose of audio drama. So these are fans of fiction podcasts, but they're not my fans. They're not. Not by a long shot. So the fallout from that was a serious exploration of how long I was willing, or am willing, because I haven't made up my mind, to continue to do audio drama. There is no money in audio drama. It's expense after expense after expense, and hopefully, calling on the goodwill of people who are willing to help you for free. Because nothing comes in. Unlike those of you who are pure writers that are trying to get published or are published and putting books out there, you may not sell a lot, but at least you're selling. Audio drama doesn't do that, with very, 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 very few exceptions. Audio drama does not do that. It doesn't sell. And those of us who do have some sort of income, it usually comes in the form of Patreon. So monthly donations, basically by your diehard fans who want you to keep going. But nobody's buying anything except for the very, very few. Whereas all kinds of writers are at least making $1 or $2 a month on selling a copy or 2 or 3 or 10 or 10,000 of their latest ebook or their back catalog. And then I realized something as I was for a short time sitting there going, screw it. I just need to stop wasting my time with audio drama because I'm not writing to the people who my stories will appeal to. My stories appeal to people who grew up on, 80s slasher horror. Stephen King, Clive Barker, huge influence. Robert Jordan is a fantasy influence of mine. And, those epic tales and, that type of story presentation isn't necessarily where this crowd that was at this conference wants to go with their stories. And that's okay. But that's the thing. It took me a while to get there to that realization that I love my stories. And yeah, I have to really do a hard analysis to determine how much more I want to invest in audio drama, because every hour I invest in audio drama is an hour I'm not working on something to get another book ready to be published. And that's because where my audience is, where my fans are, is more likely in books. than it is an audio drama. That's not to say that I don't have fans of my stories in audio drama. I do. I've got hundreds of thousands of downloads of my fictional shows. That's not the issue. The issue is that the medium, for one reason or another, and, there's all kinds of cultural and generational reasons we could explore, but I'm not going to. People expect podcasts for free. And they do not distinguish this type of show where you just get on a microphone and talk to a fiction podcast where you spend months, a year, 2 years, world building, developing scripts, editing scripts, casting, rehearsing, recording, producing. It's a completely different world, but the mindset of the consumer is the same. All podcasts are equal, and that's just not the truth. And I can say that because I've been podcasting since 2011, and I've done all kinds. It's just not. The truth is that they're not all equal. Audio drama is much, much, much more complex than any other type of podcast out there. I challenge anyone to combat me on that. So I'm doing this analysis still because I don't want to make an irrational or emotional decision. But I do know one thing. I love my stories. And I love the people who love my stories because I feel a kinship to them. There was a young lady who stopped me literally as I was leaving the con. I left a couple hours early after talking to some new audio dramatists that I had just met. And I thought she was there to speak to them. They had a booth. And I said, "Oh, I'll step out of your way. It was nice meeting you. And, I'll catch you on the internet." So that this young lady could come up and talk to them. And she said, no, I'm actually here to talk to you about your shows. And it was a great feeling. And it was it was the perfect way to leave that conference. So Ruby, if you ever trip across this podcast, I'm talking about you. Thank you for asking me about my stuff as I was leaving that conference. Because it was almost like fate intervening, going, don't beat yourself up too much. There are people who you might not necessarily think who are in your audience who actually are. I'm not going to change my stories. I'm not going to try to tell someone else's story, and I'm not going to try to tell my stories the way that appeal to the masses. I'm just not. It's like asking that person in your life you love to change the way they dress, the way they do their hair, or for me, my wife, right? Her hair, her makeup, those things that, your wife may or may not do. It would be like me asking her to change all that because I want her to fit some mold, if you will, that, the popular concept of what a woman is supposed to look like. I'm not going to do that. I love her for who she is. The same thing rings true with my stories. I love them for what they are. Diary of a Madman gets all kinds of hate. It gets all kinds of love, too. And I need to remember those people who send it the love. Some people don't like Subject Found. One person gave it a 1-star rating because it's pro-Bigfoot propaganda. I'm not kidding. Probably the dumbest thing I've ever had said about one of my shows. But I loved that first season because I love Bigfoot lore. It's fun to explore. Just like season 2 was a heck of a lot of fun to do. And hopefully, as it's just entering its second season, you all are going to go give it a try because it's a brand new story and a brand new monster. So if you're not a Bigfoot person and you skip that first season because of it, well, now you've got something else to check out. But as a creator, I want to stay true to that, to my stories, because I love them. The rest of the world be damned. And that's not to fan the flames of war. That's to say, the spirit of that comment is to say, I don't care. I don't care if I'll never be on the main stage of PodCon or the main stage of PodFest or DragonCon or any of those things, because I'm not necessarily writing for those people until the audience changes. I'm going to write darker stories. I'm going to try to get more twisted because I want to channel my inner Clive Barker from the Books of Blood days. And that's the stuff I like. I'm not going to write jump scare horror that the last 20 years of Hollywood have shoved down our throats and conditioned us to accept as what horror is. Who knows? maybe this would be my opportunity to lead a rebirth of old school horror in the vein of, Pet Sematary and well, not necessarily Cujo, because I didn't like Cujo, but It and Needful Things and, again, Clive Barker's Books of Blood, stuff like that. Some of Dean Koontz's earlier work. Maybe it's time for that stuff. Hell, bell bottoms have already come back. Denim jackets with hoods have come back. Why the hell not? The big message I want you to take away and I'm asking you to think about is, do you love your art that much? Have you accepted that it's okay to be you? It's not easy. This is well past my con that I attended. And from time to time, thoughts will pop up. But I'm much better now than I was immediately after the conference. I can promise you that. But I ask you to be okay being you, whatever it is you're creating. I know we can be neurotic sometimes about our art. I get it. Man, do I get it. But love yourself. Love your stories. It doesn't matter if 100,000 people love them or 100 people or one person, and that person is your mom, loves it. If you're truly okay with being you. You're going to waver. You're going to experience peaks and valleys. All of that is normal. Surround yourself with positive, supportive people for those times when the suck does come, because it's inevitable. It will come. Ride through that valley, back up to the peak with that person, even if you have to jump on their back, because you're worth it and your stories are worth it. It's okay to be you. And I know that because it's okay to be me. All right. So let's get out of here. Let's end this episode that went way longer than I expected it to. I hope that you always find value in all of these ramblings. I really do, and I truly mean that, because I want you to keep telling your stories, no matter who you are or what your stories are, whether they're dark and twisted like mine or whether they're like the weird stories that I don't seem to be able to create, but that most people seem to love now. It's okay. It's okay. Keep telling your stories. But before you go finish that story, do me a favor. Jump on over to your favorite podcatcher and leave a 5-star rating and review for this show, please. Those of you who leave comments, double hugs, double digital hugs every time I see you on the internet, because that stuff goes a long way in helping this show be found. Let's keep creating art together, folks. You can find me on the Twitter sphere at Writing Horrible or at Pulsating, on Facebook at the Pulsating. Don't ask about that. It was the only one available. Or simply just go over to pulsating.com. You can find my stuff there. You can sign up for the newsletter there so you can stay abreast of all the things that are coming. Until episode 26, keep being epic. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.